Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob Potter from thepromiserevealed.net. And today I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing you to one of the most advanced, I'll say, spiritual and technological scientists on the earth, at least who's coming forward at this time. As you folks know, I work with Dr. Fred Bell, a Pleiadian contactee. I was having experiences from the age of 8. And a lot of my information, of course, my mission is working with the Venusians directly. I recorded interviews and working with Valiant Thor, the moon base commander, and others. And I've been trying for a couple of years to get David out here to Mount Shasta. He's got 2 lovely children, and he's just really wrapped up there. He's I guess he's watching hockey and drinking Labatt's beer, whatever they do in Canada. They're not getting. Anyway, so today we're going to go into his wonderful technology. He does have his new website is being reworked with a new look. And today we're going to go into another direction here with his wonderful information. So I'm going to start off by giving him a little plug, which I always like to do for my speakers, is to share his website, because I think his website is very important.
DavidSereda.co.
There it is. So this is it, ladies and gentlemen. It's DavidSera.
No, E.
And we're on the home page here. He has a new look. So let me get rid of that. Make sure that's out of there. I don't know. Can you see the whole thing there? There we go.
Yeah,
so he's got home coils and beds. And so I had talked to him. He's had his own personal experience. If you go back in my archives,
Sereda.
I'm going to get Sereda. Sorry, Sereda as a spiritual contactee. He had his own experience, and you can find that under his books. You notice he has an inner circle like I do. My inner circle is fashioned after Dr. Frank Strange's, who encouraged everyone in his inner circle to create their own form of dissemination of this spiritual knowledge. And with Dr. Fred Bell and my association with other people like David Adair and Richard Allen Miller, the physicist, I'm really interested in advancing the technologies which will free us. But of course, everything has to come from a spiritual perspective. So David Sereda, welcome to the show. Tell us about, it says Venus, various products for everyone needs here. So why don't you start off, we'll go into your technology in a little bit, but we were going to start off talking about your extraterrestrial contacts, of which I've known, and you don't emphasize this, of course, but you've had a face-to-face meeting with Jesus Christ during a time of tremendous, I'll say, physical, mental, emotional suffering, the stress that brought on these beautiful contacts, ladies and gentlemen, with those that the Venusians call the Creator Son, or the theophanic angel, the one like unto God, which would be Archangel Michael, who overshadowed and fused with the ascended master Sanat Kumara of 18 million years of Venus, and for 3.5 years overshadowed the one that we know as Jesus the Christ, which was actually Yeshua ben Joseph. That was a beautiful interview, and I recommend you go back to that. But today we're going to bring in a little bit of the cosmic information. David's, I'll just call it advanced spiritual technologies and information have brought him to the point of guidance where you've actually, I asked him, are you comfortable sharing your extraterrestrial experiences? And he just started right off. So we had to kind of go back here. So Shiraz, if you want to come up and share that information, and maybe David, you can tell us where this all began. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, it really does begin, Robert, with my encounters with Christ. I mean, I grew up, I was born in Canada in 1961, so I'm 62 this year.
Mm-hmm.
In this year I'll be 63. And my dad moved us and my mom, we moved to Berkeley, California, where my dad was getting a PhD in psychology. And he got into meditation and he was writing his PhD thesis on the super learning and healing effects of deep relaxation and meditation. So he was very impressed by meditation. So by the time I was 12, I was meditating. And then by the time I would say I was 16, I was meditating every day. And what I mean by meditation are a lot of transpersonal techniques, like a lot of deep breath work, a lot of work with mantra, a lot of work with yoga. And what really got me focused on a very, very rooted meditation practice was Vipassana meditation. I mean, I would sit in meditation in my younger years 3 to 7 hours a day. So I was fully devoted to that practice and still am today. And also working as a tree planter in British Columbia. I had planted over 1.5 million trees over 23 years. I know that sounds impossible, but when you're planting trees 8 feet apart and they're about this big and you're really fit, it's really amazing how many trees. And that was, to me, planting trees was like prostrations to the earth, prostrations to the earth. You know, when I went to India in 1994, you'd see the Buddhist monks sliding on these smooth boards, and you think you're going to see them all meditating. But when they go to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha was enlightened, they actually practice these prostrations. And I thought, well, I've done that over 1.5 million times, putting trees in the ground, and it does something to you to be in the forest and practice my meditation in my tent every day. I mean, this is 23 years. And so in 1994, that particular year, somebody in the government stole all my earnings out of my bank account, left me destitute. And I pitched my tent on my dad's 3 acres in Topanga Canyon where his wife had horses. And I was like, what am I going to do to survive this winter? And rain just came down pouring in about mid-October, and there's a really deep meaning to mid-October I'll get into later in the harmonics of what mid-October is, because of course that's when the miracle of the sun happened at Fatima, and we now know what the miracle of the sun at Fatima really is. But on that date, in the middle of the night, my tent was flooded. I was in a gully, and just like you're having these rainstorms in California right now, it was that bad. But I was in a little tent in a gully, so my tent was filling up with water. I remember all my papers and my briefcase floating, and I'm floating in the water in the middle of the night. I thought I'm going to get hypothermia and die.
Why
And
didn't
all
you
of
go
a
to your
sudden,
dad's house? Why didn't you just go up to your dad's? You were dad.
because I was really fed up. I was like, I said, God, just take me. I've had enough. I've had it. And so I started floating out of my body, and it was still dark. And all of a sudden, this big crucifix appeared right amongst the oak trees in Topanga Canyon. And my dad's property, for those people who know Topanga, is right on the hill behind the Inn of the Seventh Ray, and the spiritual bookstore is
I know what that
right
is.
behind me. So all of a sudden, there's this crucifix, and there's a baptismal pool shaped just like a cross, and the water has this ominous angelic sound coming from it. And I just fall into the water and got baptized by Jesus himself. And all of a sudden, I'm carried up into the sky. It's a feeling like when you're a baby and your mother picks you up. It's a feeling of trust that this carrying was like God was just carrying me, and just relax. Let God carry you where God is going to carry you. And I thought, you're dead. You died. And I froze to death, and I went above the rain clouds. And then all of a sudden I could see on the horizon, I was way above, Topanga, California, Malibu in the air, and like millions of tiny balls of light, like the size of atoms. And your eyes in the spirit can literally see thousands of times better than these human eyes can see right now, even with 20/20 vision, thousands of times more clarity. And millions of glistening balls of light came rushing together and made a deafening sound. And there's Jesus Christ in front of me. And I just started, tears just pouring down my face, and I look up at his face. Oh my God, he's so holy, you can't look. And I look at his bare feet, which were in sandals. I look at it, oh my God, he's the most holy, most powerful being. I'd met all these yogis, met all these gurus. I'd never seen anything like this. Nothing compared to meeting Christ. And he started talking. And the first thing he said to me was, I've appeared to a number of people throughout history, but at different vibrational levels of their spiritual ability. He said, no one has ever seen me in my entirety. So you think of the transfiguration scenes in the Bible, and also if you read the Gnostic, you'll see there's more transfigurations. What I was seeing would be equal to 1,000 times the brightness of our sun, but it's not the physical brightness of the light that is so challenging as what the light's made out of. It's made out of immense purity, innocence, immense love, unimaginable levels of ecstasy, unimaginable graces for which we don't even have words. The power of God is in the light. The power of the creation, all the sacred geometries, all of the mathematical codes are all radiating from the face of Christ. So I would look and then look down. I would, oh my God, you can't look at him. He's too holy. He's too powerful. I can look at his feet, and looking at his feet is beyond all the spiritual teachers I've ever met on earth, just looking at his feet.
Right.
So
You mentioned that in your book.
that day, my third eye became so open, and Jesus said, even now you're not seeing me in my entirety, David. And you know, he had just baptized me himself. He'd given me the sign of the cross. This wasn't the deceiver. So what happens next is within days, and there was a whole teaching he gave me that day. I mean, it's long. I can't transmit it all here today, but suddenly I could see spiritual beings with my eyes perfectly clearly. I'm not talking about going into a trance and then having a vision in my mind's eye. I physically would see them, and I built a yurt, which is a much better tent, and it was built on a deck on the hillside right behind the Inn of the Seventh Ray. I used to hear all the weddings down there, all the parties, and when I was meditating, and that spot was so powerful and magical. Jesus would appear to me again on Easter 97, then again in 1999, and then the Mother Mary started appearing to me there. And that is where hundreds of spiritual beings from other star systems started appearing to me in that yurt. And there's something, you think about the tabernacle of Moses was a tent. So the original Holy of Holies was 10 by 10 by 10 royal cubits, and the holy place was 10 by 20 cubits. Now note, the Queen's chamber in the Great Pyramid is 10 by 10 royal cubits, and the King's chamber is 10 by 20 royal cubits, the same measurements as the tabernacle and the holy place, which was originally a tent. And I always wondered why Jesus would only appear to me in my tent, in my yurt. So this went on for years. And in fact, one experience I had is when these three balls of light come in, I wake up, I feel this electrical static in my body, and boom, my spine kind of bolts up all by itself. And I had this 4-posted, queen size bed in there. My ceiling in that yurt was about 10 feet high. It was really high ceiling. And these three balls of light are floating in front of me, and one is pearly, shimmering. They're about this big, about like the size of a beach ball. And another one was a fuchsia, lavender, purple, and another one was like a golden color. And they said, we're Arcturians. And I'm like, I don't know what an Arcturian is. And they were joking around. They were balls, but they spoke English. Now note in the crop circles, the balls of light about this size that have been filmed that make the circles.
Right.
I'd never heard of Arcturus, the star. I didn't know what they meant, that we're Arcturians. And then they started talking about Jesus, but they were being they're like a bunch of guys that were like having a lot of fun, and they're joking around. And I said, I don't know who you guys are, but you better leave. And they go shooting up through the ceiling of my yurt, and they go, and then I fall back asleep, and I chase them out of body, and they went into these psychedelic motherships that were like the Imperial cruisers in Star Wars, but they were made of light, and they were cruising up and down the California coast. And this is 90s, right? So the first appearance was mid-October 94, which is, remember, when the miracle of the sun at Fatima happened, October 13th, 1917. And then there was the Topanga UFO wave, which a lot of people who lived there heard about. And so that opening of my third eye, and the first three meetings I had with Isa, Yeshua, Jesus, was there, and I've had others since. And then by his instruction, I was given the instructions and the insight to decode the staff and the scepter of the Bible. In Mark 6:1-8, Jesus tells the apostles, you can have no money in your purse, no bread, just a staff only. And remember, the staff, by description in the book of Moses, I think it's in Numbers, it says you put a copper serpent, which is the language of symbols. You don't put an actual copper serpent. It just means a copper coil on a pole. And the pole would measure at 2.5 biblical cubits, because it, in the book of Hebrews, it says the staff lay in the Ark of the Covenant, which is 2.5 cubits. So it's giving you the mathematical code. So a staff, it's an antenna, which is a staff. It's a bio antenna. The way monopole antennas work is their height is 1/4 of their wavelength. So that would mean 10 cubits is the wavelength of a 2.5 cubit staff, because 2.5 times 4, because the wavelength is 4 times the height of the monopole, or the monopole is 1/4 of the full wavelength, means the Queen's chamber in the pyramid and the original Holy of Holies, when it was the tent, the tabernacle, was 10 cubits by 10 cubits. So that tells you that holy space, the Holy of Holies, would vibrate at the frequency that now this isn't a 2.5 cubit staff. This is a 1 cubit, perfect cubit. It's perfect. And that would take me hours to explain the math on how you find what a perfect cubit is. So that's what God, Jesus, inspired me to do. And when you work with a proper coiled staff, you start. I'll give you a description this morning. So when I come in, I wake up in the house, and I've got an 8-year-old daughter to take care of, and my 13-year-old daughter is in the house. I wake up every morning, and I have my tea, and I meditate. And when I meditate now, the halo region between the heart and the infinite sphere, the nimbus holographic sphere of the halo, is so intensely filled with the highest frequency bliss and love and supernatural qualities that are actually present for me every day, and have been every single day for the last 7 years.
This is an amazing.
When I
Okay.
come in here, Robert, and I pick this up, and I was meditating over there,
Yeah.
this amplified that supernatural ecstasy by 1,000 times. It was like it was raining ecstasy in here this morning when I was holding this on my knee. And then I set it down, and I feel I come down in frequency quite a bit to a much more stable level of the bliss consciousness, and then I pick it up and hold it again, and it's just it's incredible how blinding this state gets. So the reason Jesus is telling the apostles to have their staff, which was not wood, it was clearly a metal rod, because in Revelation Jesus says that he will rule with a rod of iron, steel, and therefore it's metal. And then a brass coil in the books of Moses is not a wooden staff. That's a brass coil, which is copper.
Right.
So therefore, what Jesus was showing me is this tool is like a musical instrument. If I keep the person nervous system, because we have electricity, which you can measure in your fingers and your earlobes.
Yeah.
If I interface with a correctly calibrated coiled rod at the right height, then it will keep my nervous system tuned to the frequency of 1 cubit or 10 cubits. There's many different staffs in the Bible. Like in Ezekiel, the angel comes down holding a 6-cubit staff. In the temple scroll, which is part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's an angel holding a 7-cubit staff. I can calculate the frequency of any of those staffs mathematically and put it into a person's body.
Well, this is a wonderful technology. I have a few questions. We've gone over
Yeah.
quite a lot. I'd like to, first of all, you mentioned the Fatima prophecy. I know the third prophecy basically says that the whatever that pope is going to be the Antichrist. Would you agree with that? But I wanted to curious what you were saying. You know what the Fatima vision was.
Oh, it's huge, Robert. I mean, we would have to do a proper, but let me show you. We can do share a screen here.
Yeah.
I can give people a quick synopsis of what really Fatima is.
Okay.
And
That was great.
it comes from a vision of my wife who died August 9th, 2021. And my wife has been in communication with me since she died, but periodically, meaning very rarely.
Okay.
And this chart is built. Okay, so the first time when my wife first died, August the 9th, remember that's the anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki, which is the
Right.
day she chose to exit. She called out my name. It's 243 days after she died. And you know what that is, because Venus takes 243 days to turn around once.
Yeah.
So
To make one revolution in a day, it takes that long. They have I think it's 119 days or something of day and night. My friend Raymond Keller, who lived on Venus, was the poet scribe in his first lifetime, Publius Virgil Moro. He was taken to Venus by a Venusian contact who he met through Gabriel Green, another one of my instrumental teachers, one of the original contactees of the 50s, who, by the way, had a lot of experiences in Topanga Canyon. He was talking with an extraterrestrial. He said, well, I got to go. He jumped up on the railing of this house in Topanga and he walked off. And the ship thing where the ship, you see the normal background, he walked right into the ship, a door opened and he stepped off into it. So Gabriel Green was instrumental in a lot of things. So my friend Raymond Keller.
do you know what year that was?
I think that was in around the 90s, possibly.
Yeah, because a lot of people were actually several people were seeing Jesus in not just Topanga, but Calabasas and the in the San Fernando Valley over the mountain there. I actually met with some others, so it seemed that he was visiting a number of people.
There's an amazing thing there. The end of the seventh race, ladies and gentlemen, is where Fred Bell spent a lot of time. He started to gather a semi-celebrity following because of his scientific genius and what he was doing. But we used to go up there, and of course, this was like 70s when the spiritual new age was the hippies had kind of developed into more. It was part of the evolution of starseeds and the truth coming out. So Raymond traveled in a nimbus, folks, which is a Venusian technology. It's a little sphere that the Venusians carry that can augment, used by their mental powers to create a vehicle of transport. And this vehicle of transport can generally fly within the planet's atmosphere. Raymond, when he was up there in 2012, he was taken to Venus to witness the ascension of that Queen of Venus. It's based on the bees and the
Asherah or the bee goddess. Yeah, I know who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Lady Mazu at that time. She was a Chinese saint who calmed the Jade Ocean, and so the region of Venus is the accidental apostle Lord Dismas, who died with Christ on the cross. We would know him as the ascended Master El Moria. And Raymond said after she got into her nimbus to ascend to the pleroma or the seventh dimension, she El Moria announced that the new Queen of Venus was Lady Orta, sitting next to my friend Raymond. So when she went up, she came back. I'm the queen. Would you like to stay longer? And he did stay for 10 weeks up there. And every day, well, the next day he went to Ascended Master El Moria, and I said, "Well, you met an Ascended Master, the guy who died with Christ on the cross, the regent El Moria. What was it like?" He said it was. He says, awe and wonderment, golden light was radiating off his head. I said, well, what'd you say to him? He said, can I see the Akashic records? And he said, looked up at the sky and said, why not? So the queen came back and says, how was your day? She says, and he said, it was good. Hey, he said, can I see the Akashic records? And she said that the Metrons in the Time Temple don't normally like people going back to Earth to look at the Akashic records. He said, I asked Lord Dismas, he said, okay, so she took him in, and that's what he did. And he found out in his first lifetime, he was the first poet scribe. He wrote the Aeneid of the founding of Rome, which is a continuation of the spiritual hierarchies work in Troy, the recreation of the Roman Empire. Of course, it got lost in translation there shortly after. But when he was up there, he met a woman named Lady. Her name was. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused here. But Dante met a woman named Beatrice.
Beatrice, yeah.
Beatrice, and Raymond showed Dante around on Venus because he was taken up there by the Mormon saint lady. Her name was Lady Ankara, and the Mormon saint that we know as Annalise Guerin. And he's had contact with her since he's been up there. He's a lot of contacts with the Venusians, and he's the one that introduced me. But so this Nimbus story and the story of the Ark of the Covenant is closely related to what are called the Urim and the Thummim stones used by Joseph Smith, Paul Solom, and of course, Raymond Keller was given a pair of these glasses that allowed him to look into the past. He was given a breastplate of Aaron was made for him with 12 different stones and the things, and he was able to look into the past. I wasn't allowed to reveal this, but he was able to look into the past to translate the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus's twin brother, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Youth Gospel of Jesus, and the Acts of Thomas. And this book is available on my website, and that's Raymond Keller. So let's go back to that image of the planets. Ladies and gentlemen, we were talking previously about his communication, and I'd like to, with the other dimensions, Raymond said there's up to 60 planets in the higher dimensions within this solar system. So you were talking about this planet.
Okay, yeah, so exactly. So my wife, let me go back to that shot.
Yeah, thank you.
So my wife called out, now there's two things about Venus. So this chart took me over a year, I mean, almost a year to build based on the two dates my wife called out my name. When she calls out my name, it's so loud, it shakes the house and it wakes me up at the time and the date. So Venus has two dates. It's 224.701 exact sidereal Earth days to go around the sun once. But then a Venus day, which is a rotation of the planet, is 243 Earth days. So my wife calls out my name in accordance with Venus the first time, and I think she's in Dante's third level of heaven, right? So what happens next is my wife calls out my name 591 days after she died. Now, that is so remarkable what 591 means. I'm going to have to get my calculator and show everybody because none of you will mistake this when I show you this.
I have a quick
So,
question while you're doing that. So I noticed you say above the firmament.
yeah, I'll
So
explain all that in a minute.
many people think the
Because
firmament was the ice canopy. This is a frequency vibrational shift.
it's a frequency vibrational line of light, which is between the antimatter planets and the matter planets. So our electrons down here spin negative, their spin positive. Days after she died, divided by the golden ratio, 1.61803398887 is very refined golden ratio, and you get 365.258. Now, that is the sidereal day for a solar year of Earth. This is 99.99999% accurate. Now I'm going to divide it by the golden ratio again. That's Venus. Venus is 220. It's just under 225 days. So my accuracy on Venus is better than 98%. I'm going to divide it by the golden ratio again, and I get a planet between Venus and Mercury with an orbit of 139.5 days. Now watch that point, because that is where the miracle of the sun at Fatima lines up with. That is where the Buddha's birthday lines up with. That is where Jesus's Ascension Day lines up, which is 40 days after the resurrection. That is where Yom Kippur will line up. That is where John Denver's death and St. Francis's death will line up in harmony with. Now, I'm going to divide it by the golden ratio again, and this is Mercury. And my accuracy for Mercury is, because Mercury is just under 88 days, my accuracy for Mercury is almost 98%. So you can see this formula that my wife gave us is incredibly accurate, 591 to the golden ratio. Now, if I take this pattern, 591 divided by the golden ratio is Earth, divided by the golden ratio again is Venus, divided by the golden ratio again is planet 139.51, right? Divided by the golden ratio is Mercury, and it just keeps going. You'll actually come to planet Vulcan, which was discovered by astronomers in the 19th century and even in the 18th century. And it's a planet with a period of 20 days, which is what the formula confirms, is closer to the sun than Mercury. Now, if I take 591 times the golden ratio, I'll see a planet above the firmament, a planet below the firmament, a planet above the firmament, Jupiter below, 655,429 above, Saturn below, and my accuracy all the way to Neptune remains incredibly high. Now, Dante, if you read the Paradiso thoroughly, as I have read, when Dante ascends all the way to the 9th, remember, he passes Saturn and he marks an 8th and a 9th position, but he doesn't call them Uranus and Neptune because they didn't exist at the time of Dante.
Right.
But at the 9th level, which would be Neptune, he gets to meet Christ for the first time, who blinds him, just like what happened to me. And Jesus shows him there's 9 more planets, heavenly bodies above the invisible planets below. Now, Dante doesn't go any further, but if I count these positions from the outermost to my 139, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 139 is the 7th ascended heaven. Now, notice in your book of Revelation, it says that this is going to happen in a twinkling of an eye. When there's the new earth, the old earth and the old heavens will pass away. Heavens are referred to as planets, right? When Jesus points to the 7 stars in his hand in Revelation, those are the 7 planets in the time of antiquity, which includes the sun and the moon among them. So in the if you read the Greek in the New Testament, they're not stars he's pointing to, planets. So that means that with this formula, 591 times the golden ratio to go out and divided by the golden ratio to go in, we only have one area of discrepancy of around 87% accuracy, which is Mars. And that's because between Mars and Jupiter, we have the asteroid belt. And if you read Sitchin's work,
Right.
this is where a great war in the lower heavens occurred.
It was a planet called Maldek. Yeah, I know.
Right.
It's
So all these
the Oort cloud. It's all the same thing. Yeah.
right. So they got knocked a little bit out of their orbit. Mars
Right.
should have been at 591. Instead, it's at 686.98 today. So this region here, if you understand the Book of Revelation correctly, when the old heavens pass away, Earth goes above our vibrational energy line, whether it's the firmament or whether it's the division. You see, when physicists took pictures of antimatter, it's physically matter. They actually have photographs of positive electrons. But what they found is that you can only see antimatter at a very, very high frequency in the experiment, which is the gamma spectrum. So what that means is that is essentially that because our electrons on our atoms are coded to spin negative counterclockwise from the top, their electrons would spin clockwise, known as positrons. They can't see each other. You cannot see antimatter unless you raise the frequency of matter. So we have real pictures of positive electrons. In fact, physicists have already proposed decades ago with the discovery of antimatter that there must be antimatter persons, antimatter planets, antimatter solar systems, antimatter galaxies. So that means
David, the positrons can't see the negative ion.
no, because if they see each other and they're protected by a membrane, and that membrane I'm representing as this blue line.
I have some questions here.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the incredible I would say it correspondences that you're showing here in terms of frequency. So I'd like to ask some questions here in relationship to the a little more down to earth for people in terms of what this means for our understanding of the omniverse. I'm going to ask a series of questions here. So Raymond says that we will eventually become a celestialized sphere. I've asked the Queen of Venus specifically about a polar shift, an axial flip, and various things. And so I'm going to couple things here, and I'd like you to comment on them as I go through these questions. Number one, they said we don't worry about a magnetic shift. Those happen fairly frequently. They're not that big of a deal. We're more concerned with an axial flip. The Venusians have said that we have an axial flip, which causes the Earth to rotate to the South Pole and the North every 5,000 years because of we're on a tilt and something in our past. So I asked them about Nibiru. They said, yes, it's real. It has a 3,600-year elliptical orbit, and we're not worried about it. It's 1,500 years away, but when it comes, it will cause great challenges. So they've been telling me that, you and the light workers are the chosen ones, and the chosen ones will be evacuated from the Earth sometime pretty soon, probably within the next 10 years. They said we are entering what is called the tribulation period. And the recording that I have from the Queen of Venus, which I've shared with public, but a lot of people don't really are difficult to relate to the spiritual ascension and physical. And they said that people will be moved to planets, planetoids, asteroids, and planets, and of course, space platforms, and will return to the Earth to help after a series of natural cataclysms. She did say for people to fear God, and I don't believe in fearing God, but she meant fear nature. And Fred Bell had told me that the sun sends out what are called S waves, And then when it hits the planet, depending on the planet's level of vibration and frequency, the sun or the earth will send back P waves, which will cause other challenges on the earth, which I believe are the tremendous atmospheric changes. Now, we're seeing what is called really solar warming, because the air temperature in outer space right now, according to the Venusians, and they've told me this is going to cause great challenges, is 10,000 degrees now outside the Earth's atmosphere all the way out to Pluto. So this is exasperating the solar flares and increasing intense radiation, stripping our outer ionosphere and causing more cosmic rays, which will increase human frequency, cause DNA changes, and create this cymatic shift where the things are changing. So along those lines, with this hydrogen cloud is 55 million miles long. We're 22 years or 21 years into it now. It's going to be happening for another 100 years. So these are the challenges. So I want to ask you one thing. I noticed in your chart that the different planets above and below, could these be these are completely different spheres in the antimatter universe? Because I'm wondering, is the Earth going to disappear from the physical dimension, or will there still be a physical Earth, but it has a counterpart in the firmament above? That's the first question.
Well, see, let me just show you when you can really see, because you're really close to the what I believe is the answer they're giving me.
Okay.
What really happened at Fatima is planet 139 eclipsed the Earth at a point that actually had an alignment to Venus and the Earth, which made it bigger and cast the shadow and what's called an annular eclipse, because the witnesses at Fatima described it as an annular eclipse would be described, which leaves a ring of light around the sun but blocks out most of the sun. That's the real description at Fatima.
Okay.
So when you count from, there's two start dates that you count from. I'll actually show you what this looks like in a second here. I just got to pull this.
I heard it was cloudy on the day of Fatima, and I thought that was a cloud cover, so a spaceship came down and danced. But
no, it's not a spaceship. It's planet 139, because planet 139.
Was this seen elsewhere besides Fatima?
Yes, it was actually. So we will, but let's stay focused here. So January 7th. So there's two start dates for your solar year, your lunar year, and so we can count. That's why Christmas, the original Christmas, was January the 6th and 7th. The first church is celebrated because that's after aphelion, perihelion and aphelion. You have the two ends of the ellipse. So the winter is 3 days and nights after, which is 4,320 minutes, which is 432 after the advent of the ellipse for winter. So we count, let me just show people this. So we go share screen. So we count from January 7th to October 13th. Of course, this year's a leap year, so it's giving me an extra day. It's 279 days, right? So watch on my calculator. That's two orbits of 139. So let's go to my calculator, share screen.
I trust you on
So
that.
we take 279 divided by two orbits is 139 and a half, right? So watch, let's go back to my chart of my planets and we'll see. There we go.
Everything is ordered, people. The creator.
It's so perfect. Well, when I show people this, it's planet 139 and a half. You see how Fatima lines up. Now remember, I'm just using the golden ratio, counting with the number of days my wife spoke out, 591, divided by the golden ratio of Earth, divided by the golden ratio of Venus, divided by the golden ratio is 139 and a half. And I just showed you the miracle of the sun at Fatima is exactly two orbits of 139 and a half. Now, in the book of the New Testament, the number of times in the original Greek, the word heaven is recited recorded is 139 times 2, right? 278, which is 99% of 279. So why is that? Because there is a planet here. So when this align, remember, I meet Jesus in the middle of October, which is when this planet aligns in this harmony every so many years with Earth. And Venus, now watch on my calculator, Robert. This is because you're going to see Venus here in a second. So let's take share screen calculator, 365.25 6 days per year minus 139.51 Venus.
Wow.
So Venus and 139 are opposite polarities of each other in the matrix. And remember, Jesus declares himself the morning star, Venus, in Revelation.
I tell that to people all the time.
And guess what happens with Venus that no other planet does? You probably know this, but just for your listeners, Venus is the only actual planet in the solar system that's spinning the other way.
Other direction, yeah.
And what does that mean? Because the polarity between antimatter and matter is the direction of spin. So the sun is even spinning clockwise. We're all spinning except for Venus in, I always mix up the directions. So Venus therefore becomes the portal to the antimatter ascension planets.
Right.
Because when you enter its magnetic field, your electrons will spin the other way, and you'll end up seeing all these planets that we don't see.
I'm going to talk to a great scientist here for just a moment.
Yeah.
Hey, David, how are you doing? Can I call you back? I'm doing an interview with David Sereda. I'll let you go. I'll call you back. That's David Adair, the famous rocket scientist in charge of the new space program.
Oh yeah, he should see this. I mean, you should get him to see this interview because when you understand, I'm going to show you a website. I want people to see this so that they know that I'm not just making this stuff up. I'm just going to find where I have it bookmarked here, and it's so incredible. Here it is. It's an antimatter physics article that describes. So let's look at this, people, because I want you to see that this isn't just me pulling rabbits out of my hat. So this is physicist David Harrison, University of Toronto, and he documents all the greatest comments from the major physicists of history on the discovery of antimatter. Paul Dirac, but I'm going to come to one point. Richard Feynman would say that antimatter is going time negative, and well, we're going time positive, even though that's debatable. And then you come to this part, and I'll read this to you. Recall that in the very early days of the universe, matter was created through pair production of electron positrons and positron antiprotons. Does this mean that one half of the matter in the universe is antimatter? Almost all experts in this field know the answer to the question is that some experts think the answer is yes, and the other one no, just like matter and antimatter, yes and no. Now watch. Recall that a simple model of a hydrogen atom is a positively charged proton and a negatively charged electron in orbit around it. We can similarly have anti-hydrogen atom with a negatively charged antiproton with a positively charged positron in orbit around it, which would make it an anti-hydrogen atom, and they've done this. It is certainly possible that there are antimatter galaxies with anti-solar systems and maybe anti-people. In Dirac's theory, we might say that the anti-people are holes in a sea of... So what he's saying here is exactly what I'm saying is totally feasible. That
this is incredible. So the antimatter, I want to go back to some of the other questions here that I had on that to ask you is this antimatter, and this kind of goes into the oversoul theory where we have 8 parallel Earths and 8 parallel universes, according to Raymond Keller. He met his oversoul as part of his development and his spiritual near-death experience. And I said, how did you know? He said the bodies were different. So I want to, obviously, when we think of the creation and the Father's creation, folks, when we look out with James Webb and Hubble, all we're seeing is the physical universes. We're seeing worlds and galaxies without end. Imagine now we multiply this through vibrational frequencies of infinite number of possibilities. Creation is so vast, the creator is so full of love and power that we can't conceive this. And this is why, um, you know, we have to let go of what we think we know and realize and begin to learn who we are and where we are in the universe. And it all comes down to understanding the power of love that David's been focusing on. So, David, I'd like to go back to the antimatter picture there. If you could share with us, I wanted to ask you your opinion here. I love the math, but I want to go back into understanding the vibrational shift. Now, do you feel the Venusians have told me, you know, because I don't like these buzzwords of, you know, the fifth dimension or this or the ascension or now that it's AI, it's all these buzzwords that people are glomming onto. And I said, are we ascending to the fifth dimension and to the, and they said, sadly, Rob, you have a long way to go. Now, that doesn't mean that individuals like yourself, your wife, Fred Bell, who I've spoken to as well, on the other side, many others are not ascending into the higher dimensions in the spiritual realms. But they were telling me that, because I'm looking at the planet and I see right now it really does have to go through this cleansing, this purification, this natural change. It's not to be seen as the end of the world, but the beginning of a new one. Like an etch-a-sketch, the earth is going to be shifted in a tremendous topographical, vibrational, and will bring people to a correct understanding of the laws that we have been violated by, of course, assisted by the fallen ones. So I want to ask you, in your opinion or in your knowledge, the twinkling of an eye, I believe, is those people evacuated. There may be two waves, but do you think the earth, that some people will be here? Will some people ascend to this new planet? Or what is your theory on the 139 planet and ascension process for the bulk of Earth? They indicate that the Earth's going to go through some shifts and that at some point Christ does eventually return to usher in that transformation to a celestialized sphere. So I'm asking for a little bit of prophecy based on your knowledge and your vast experiences.
Okay, so when you go to, in the Gnostic discovery at Nag Hammadi, the Apocryphon of John, otherwise known as the Secret Book of John,
Right.
and Jesus is in his ascended body here, which I believe his is the body where the electrons are spinning the other way.
Huh?
And let me just, in the Apocryphon of John, Jesus tells John it's very much like Sitchin's work, in that a group of lower gods fabricated the human body. Like, you know, a certain goddess was working on the ear, another group was working on the eyeball. But when we were fashioned, the supreme God planted a luminous seed called epinoia, which in Greek means like seed of light, that was planted in
Right.
every one of us. And when the supreme the supreme God of the creator gods who made us, which is a lower God, is not the supreme God. Is a very
First.
egotistical God. His name is Yaldabaoth in this manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
Found out that we got this luminous seed, we could think brighter and reach higher levels of consciousness than him.
Right.
He cast us to the lowest region of matter, not the lowest geographical region, but the lowest region of matter, which I believe is the opposite spin, which is the forbidden fruit, good and evil, positive, negative. The direction of spin went the other way. And I'll show you a picture of what antimatter really looks like. There's lots of pictures. If you look at this black and white on the right, I mean, I know this stuff really well because I worked for a nuclear physicist. So
Right.
we have electrons which govern the electromagnetic force. They carry the electromagnetic force, electricity in all of our wiring, including our bodies.
Right.
Positron appears here only at this very high frequency wavelength, which is, notice it says invisible gamma ray photons come in. And gamma rays are so high in frequency, they cause the positron to suddenly appear, but it meets
This isn't a linear accelerator, right? A collider.
right. This isn't a particle accelerator.
I just want to
And the
explain it for people.
two, in a split fraction of a second, will annihilate, and they'll convert back. All of their mass will convert back into high frequency light, gamma, and escape. But they're still carrying the data of who they are. But they can't live together. They have to be separated. Hence, going back to my 139 model, they have to be separated. Now watch this.
Okay. So I have a question here. The Venusians are living in a very high dimension, and they have areas of Venus where they have beings and from higher dimensions and lower dimensions can exist in kind of like a certain areas or portals that they create. So I'm kind of curious. The Venusians are able to, the other beings are able to lower themselves to present themselves here. I've heard of currently many different beings are kind of, I would say, singing their way down, as Alex Collier calls it, from higher frequencies to manifest and to serve in this lower dimensional universe to clear up the Yabbledoth and all those things. And I'm also working with some people in what is called ground command and the transference, and I'm going to talk to you about that after this. David Adair may be working in these. There's going to be funds and things created for that part of the global restoration. At a certain point here, there's a lot of synchronistic timing going on. So what is do you think the beings are coming down and beings going up? And I heard that the Yabbledoth and those guys are kind of being cleared.
Yeah, see, there are certain dates that we can keep seeing the pattern when there's a harmonic. Harmony means in proportion ratio to the ascension, what I'll call ascension planets. And on the miracle of Son of Fatima, October 13th, 1917 is, see, January 7th to October 12th is 278 days, which is the number of days the word heaven, the number of times the word heaven appears in the New Testament is 278. Divided by 2, which is 2 orbits of planet 139, we see the miracle of the sun at Fatima, which is the same date roughly that my first meeting with Jesus happened in Topanga, which proves that these dates are immensely powerful. A lot of people miss this because last year we had an annular eclipse go through North America on October was it the 14th or the 12th last year, which again, we're in a leap year this year, right? So the harmonic of the last annular eclipse was so powerful, right? Because we know when these dates appear. So I also ran Yom Kippur, which is the date of atonement in the Holy of Holies with the high priest in Jerusalem in the temple, in Solomon's temple, which is a bigger 1 octave lower in frequency Holy of Holies, right? So Yom Kippur dates for 24 years. We can see over this 1915. So I started at 1917, right? So because we're following a lunar calendar in the old world, we see a sine wave appear, right, in the data, because that's exactly what our moon actually does. It creates a sine wave if you follow it as a calendar. But you'll see on the peak of my sine wave, I'm within October 12th on Yom Kippur repeatedly here 3 times, almost 4 times over between 1917 and 1941. But then if because of the lunar calendar, if I count my solar year December 25th, which is 3 days after winter solstice, remember 3 days and nights, to September 27th, which is Yom Kippur, down here. You see, the 27th of September would be my midline of Yom Kippur. I'm 278 days divided by 2 is 139. So on the top of my chart and the bottom of my chart in Yom Kippur, my average harmony is planet 139 again. So
So I appreciate the math and geometry. I wanted to go into what do you think about the ascension of the planet.
This is why I'm showing this, because these alignments are going to be the dates when the harmony of Earth to the ascension planet is the most powerful. And it's most likely when the humans that are ready to ascend, their electrons will spin the other way and will be gone. Two will be in a field, one will disappear, the other
Right.
won't. Note that the other won't. And that's because the other won't is because that person's frequency isn't high enough to make the quantum leap to the new Earth. Now,
That's
yeah,
what they said. They said that certain people will be taken up, and the frequency. They said that the tribulation period is a trying time, and if people go into fear and hoarding, and those who step forward to help their fellow man during these stressful times, they said nothing's been seen like it on earth since Moses and Noah. So we're going to go through a cataclysmic series of events that will determine the heart space and the frequency of those who are on the earth. There may be, I believe there'll be two waves, maybe more, but they're going to take immediately probably a certain level of star seeds, and some who have different missions will be taken off, and at one point it will be open for anyone who could step into a beam if they choose to step into it. And some of them will not make that shift, but they'll be provided resurrection. So I'm kind of curious, do you have any dates? We saw 1940 had,
there's two.
okay, in the future.
No, there's two windows
Okay.
that these are, and the first window, let me just show you on my chart here. The first window, let's go back to here. So the first window of alignment on Earth to planet 139 is May 13th. And that's a window that has about 11 days. So about 5.5 days either side of it, right? Because the first date that Mother Mary appeared to the three children of Fatima was May the 13th. The miracle of the sun happens October 13th. And both of those dates are 139 days into the year. So May 13th is one orbit of 139. October 13th is two orbits
Two
of
orbits, yeah.
you see?
Okay.
So they're both in phase. Now notice the Buddha's birthday also falls in alignment to mid-May. So these ascended masters are coming in on harmonies. And Venus harmony is actually mid-August approximately, which is the Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary's Ascension Day. Again, changes every year, but it's mid-August, I believe, this year, like August 15th.
So I mean, these are the basic windows that you feel it
Right.
will appear on, but no year or date, right?
Well, no, we'll get to a year and a date later because
Okay.
once you understand that Venus is the double harmony in the 365 and a quarter days per year to 139. Remember, I showed you that in the calculator.
Right, yeah.
So Venus is, because it spins the other way, is the portal to ascension, which is why Jesus in Revelation declares Venus, I'm the bright and morning star, which of course is Venus.
Uh-huh.
So that means Venus plays an enormous important role. It's also the point, the bright and morning stars, where Lucifer was cast down from.
Actually, there was Maldek. That
Okay.
planet was the asteroid belt. That was what reversed Venus's spin. They were going the other direction, and when that planet hit, they reversed. And Maldek was the planet of the Marduk, which is, and I have that information from other sources, but Marduk was the offspring of Anu, who was from Orion, and that's a whole nother story of galactic intrigue here with the Anunnaki, the Draco, and other assorted planets that chose to side with the Luciferian rebellion, however
Right.
many millions of years ago.
Right, however many millions of years ago. So that's where we know that the planet Venus was of utmost importance, which is why
Yeah.
the Lucifer, being whatever you want to name it, was kicked out of it because the Supreme God didn't want him there. He
Right.
said, come down to the earth. So obviously he said it was okay for him to come down here, but you can't have Venus because Venus is like the portal window between 139 and us, right? So when the new Earth happens, so imagine you put a bunch of beach balls underwater,
Right.
and you're on Earth on your beach ball underwater, and you can't see above the water. And you can see Venus next to you, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. But the moment that ball of water, the electrons spin the other way, Earth goes above the water, you no longer see your neighbor planets anymore. You're going to see the other 9 planets that Dante was shown above the surface of the water, which is
Right.
really just an analogy. But what that means in the understanding of matter antimatter in the Apocryphon of John, that we were cast to the lowest region of matter. All that God Yaltabaoth had to do is spin our magnetic field the other way. So we know that Venus is the oddball in the solar system because its direction of spin. I actually have a chart of it somewhere in my computer. I need to find it while we're talking to show people so you can really see it.
I'm kind of curious though. So could you talk about the possible dates that you feel the Earth would have that ascension? From my understanding, the majority or the physical Earth plane that we live on now, it's going to be quite some time.
Well, I'll tell you what's really interesting. If I can find this. In Peter Lemaire's book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, he
Uh-huh.
does give us the dates. And what's amazing is 2025 plus or minus 3 years is the total collapse of the material world. And then the
That's
return,
that happening, yeah.
the return appears in the sky in October. This is in his book. There's 2 October dates. One is for the sign of the return of the Messiah, which would probably be the opening of the portal, which would be the real Star of Bethlehem. And the other date is the incarnation of the Christos, which again is in October in Peter Lemaire's book. And I'm fascinated by that.
2025?
2025, the book is over here somewhere. No, here it is. It's right here. So this is Peter Lemaire's book.
Yep.
And he decodes, this was published in the 70s, a time clock of events on the earth. So what it says, okay, 2025, the total collapse of the materialist civilization.
Yeah, I agree with that part.
2025 plus 3 years, partial reestablishment. 2034, October, appearance in the sky of the sign of the Messiah. 2039, the Christos incarnates in a physical man, October 21st. So look at his date.
Where does he get those? I mean,
Because
demarcation. I'm kind of curious about, the Venusians have definitely said 2025 are some seminal events. They weren't giving me any dates for the return of Christ or anything like that, because no man or angel knows the hour. I don't think it would be in a book, although I would indicate that 2028 is very important, because they've also told me that there's an asteroid coming between the Earth and the Moon within 400 miles, which will exasperate our natural cataclysmic cycle here, which is kind of a normal evolution that the Earth is reacting to. Of course, a little more violently due to the interference in the fall of Yabeldoth and all of that stuff. But so we're going to have high tides, heavier earthquakes, which I believe that the extraterrestrial disclosure process is being accelerated. The remnants of the fallen influence on the earth within the political infrastructure of the earth is, the bad guys are completely gone at the highest level. There's still some of them here, but right now humanity has to wake up that there's a new commander, and that is the ground command, and that the earth is now literally in our hands. No longer do we have the negative influence. Mankind must step up. They cannot do it for us. So we have to establish a new financial system and a new way of relating to each other. But with the traumatization of everyone, we do have to have this series of challenges. And if we can come together in the spirit of Christ and living that way, we can move forward. So, I mean, I'm going to ask your intuition here. Do you think that Christ is returning, or perhaps another world teacher, a world figure in 1934 is born, or
Well,
where do you feel on that prognostication? I see the demarcations. I'm kind of curious where he's grasping the knowledge of that from.
well, the way he gets his time is 1 inch
Yeah,
in the pyramid going up the Grand Gallery equals 1 year, and then he goes into Queen's Chamber, King's Chamber,
I'm
and
familiar
then
with that book.
so
Yeah,
he does it all using measurement as time. And you know what's interesting is a stadia, a measurement of a stadia. Now there's three different stadia measurements I could find, but one of them is incredibly close to 591, my magic number that I started with, decodes the upper and the lower harmonic solar system. So we know, as far as dates go, that Le Mesurier is at least relying on the pyramid. And remember, the Queen's Chamber is the same measurement as the original Holy of Holies, and the King's Chamber is the same measurement as the original Holy Place for the Israelites. Solomon's Temple doubled all those measurements, which actually brought the frequency down by 1 octave musically as frequency chambers. So they're still the same harmonic. So the point is to know, it says we can't know the date and the hour, but that doesn't mean we can't know the year, because the Bible doesn't say we can't know the year. We can't know the date and the hour. So a date would be theoretically, and again, you have to check the Greek. I would have to check the Greek on that because they were all originally written in Greek.
speaking of the Greek, you talked about that God created this what's it called, epi the
Epinoia.
epinoia. This goes forward with um this goes forward with J.J. Hurtak as well. He talks about this seed or this Christ consciousness that supersedes the negative forces. Um,
Yeah, there's pronoia and epinoia. So pronoia is a more universal seed of light, and the epinoia is more for the individual. So we all have the seed in us. The question is whether we awaken it through
right.
these practices or not. And if we don't, then we may get led in our lives and be attracted to lower things.
That's what I was thinking. That's the reason I brought that up, is because I felt that maybe the Christ consciousness on the planet, his spirit of truth is pouring out on all flesh right now and is increasing. I believe possibly that date may signify the end of a lot of and the real birth of the Christ consciousness on the planet. The Pleiadians with Billy Meyer, back in I was reading his notes. Wendell Stevens was giving them to us when I was 16 from his contacts, and he said he went to Los Angeles and he witnessed in 2000. He didn't say the year. He said he saw sometime in the future there would be an earthquake where water would come into LA and it would recede. They'd try to rebuild it, and 2 years later, Alon, the security chief who walked with Christ and was one of the magi at his birth, he's 2,400 years old, whom I met, told me that a similar thing. He said some event will happen in 2029 with the moon. He says 2 years later, a similar event occurs. Because of my position as a messenger, I believe that with my memory, I was able to remember and put those two and align them as possibly something that must be fulfilled. I asked, can we change the timelines? He said, Rob, everything in the Bible must needs be fulfilled. So certain elements of the Bible, and I also believe the pyramid as an ancient, it's a weight balance on the earth and has many other functions, as you know. I believe that possibly those, but I mean, I would love it if Jesus was born, and I probably wouldn't live to see it, but if he's born in 2034, you said?
2039, it says in here. But see,
Right.
that is, again, he says plus or minus. Let me see on that calculation what he says, whether the plus or minus is.
So he also said that he didn't see the earth. I said, look, people aren't really grasping it. There's still a lot of problems. And I said, do you think we're going to have like craziness on the earth? And he says, the longer that the lies continue, the more likely that event will occur. He wasn't prognosticating complete and total, chaos on the earth. He said the more that likely becomes. I said, when do you see the earth stabilizing? He says, we don't see it happening till 2030 or 2040. So
So
that
2039, October 21st, again, would be in perfect harmony with planet 139 for his return.
wow.
But that's two orbits of 139. So again, I find it remarkable because this was published in the 70s, and my work, based on two numbers my wife gave me since she died, is very new work. So why would it be mathematically so perfect? He doesn't say plus or minus 3 years. He says 2039, October 21st, the incarnation of the Christos happens. And
Where does he see that it's the incarnation of the Christos? Because we're looking at marks on a pyramid, or what we're looking at
no,
here.
he goes by the inch. Again, I haven't read this whole thing in years,
I know me either.
but if I read it again, I could tell you how he did the math. But what I know,
I know the math. I'm looking for the interpretation.
yeah, if I could get somebody who knows how to do astronomy clocks and add the orbits of all my ascension planets in the model perfectly, I would know the exact dates that we're looking for. And I'm not, I mean, I'm good at math. I'm a mathematician, but I'm not good enough. I would need a software expert who does orbits of planets, because once you put a hypothetical planet, like planet Vulcan, it's on Wikipedia, is considered a hypothetical planet because they saw it and then they didn't see it, and then they saw it and then they didn't see it, because it was jumping between antimatter and matter, right? And they'd never seen anything like it. They'd never seen a planet be visible and then become invisible, then become visible again.
Huh.
Well, that's what happens when you get that close to the sun, is the planet can jump between the two states of matter. So that means if I had such a person who would step forward, I could compare it to Lemaire's math, and I could get a year. Remember, the Bible, I mean, we could get it down to the year. He's got it down to October 21st, 2039. So, I mean, will we still be alive? I mean, I'm 62 and I'll be 63 this year. I hope so.
I think you'll be upstairs. They're preparing a planet around Sirius B named Bellaton, 6 times the size of the Earth, and they've been preparing it for at least it was in the fit. So at least 60 years. The Venusians have been working with the native species, which are a mantis being, are allowing them to prepare locations. They're also preparing inside the Earth in the various inner Earth civilizations are preparing for large numbers of the populace to move in there. Mankind just has to wake up and understand that we have help. And it's not about what we do, it's where our heart space is with the Christ consciousness. David, it's been absolutely wonderful. I really have enjoyed this interview. Could we maybe do a follow-up? You've got so much
Oh
more.
yeah, we're just on the tip of the iceberg of what
Oh my
I've got sitting here. I mean, I'm trying to make a motion picture. I have all the production knowledge and gear to do it on with really good effects, so people can really understand this model of ascension planets, and we live. See, that's why when we look at our neighbor planets, NASA can't see anybody other than we can see remnant civilizations on Mars. But when we look at temperatures, we think nobody can live here. But
They lie a lot. They know Venus
I know
is
they lie a lot. But even though they lie a lot, we're below the membrane, whatever
yeah.
we want to call that membrane, between matter and antimatter. And, there's no doubt that physicists accept what I'm saying. And there's no doubt that half of them would disagree with an antimatter planet theory, but I would get at least half of really good trained physicists that would agree, yes, it's actually possible.
I
And
think you're
that's cool.
I think I'm going to be able to put you in contact with some very high levels of scientists and physicists who are going or who are being liberated now from the control network and their contracts and the cycle of
Well, they're starting to come forward more and more because of these top level UFO UAP studies.
yeah.
I was reading an incredible article in the debrief last night, very long article, and you can see they have to answer where they're coming from. And one of the theories is they're coming from the solar system, but they couldn't theoretically with temperature.
Look, they know everything at the highest level. I can tell you, those in the know. Everything else is spin, and everything that's coming out in the public right now is pretty much spin. They're trying to slow the brakes on it. The ETs are going to accelerate their presence and moving forward. By the way, before we go, maybe the last question: have you? You told me you had met Arcturians. We could maybe save that for the next show. But have you had any experiences with Venus? A person that originally reached out to me a couple of years ago when I first reached out to you was said that you had like that device that you use that you're able to like make phone calls to outer space. Were you speaking with Venusians? I understand that's why you had to leave the States.
Well,
But
we were communicating with Pleiades at that time with that technology. I've never sold one of those before. I mean, it's all about if people really are interested in the real deal or they want to buy, cheap plastic wands and toys,
I know.
they're not going to have a real experience. But when you really understand that when you do something right, you really do have an experience gateway or a portal. When a temple is measured properly and it's made out of the right materials, it will act as a portal. It really will. So
Yeah,
we'll have to do a part two because I know there's more we could do.
I really appreciate this so very much. I wanted to thank you for coming on. And if you don't mind, real quick, I'm just going to do a quick share screen and then maybe I could chat with you just a moment after the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank David Sereda for being on. But before I go, I just want to share with you that I have a Mount Shasta Summer Conference. It's on my website here. If you go to you go to my homepage, then you go to the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. This July 18th to 21st in Mount Shasta, California. Raymond Keller, Vivian Chavea, Arcturian contactee, Louis Martens, a very famous Venusian contactee, working with the inner Earth, Dr. Kiva Makete Fall, an expert on, I lived from East Senegal, expert on Sirius, Brad Olson. Alex Collier will be here. Deborah Gusti, a Arcturus, another Arcturian, and a host of other people are coming. Frank Chile, many other, this famous physicist, Richard Miller, and this gentleman is a contactee. He wants to remain anonymous. Everything's here, where to go, where to stay. We have specials now. So I just wanted to give a quick infomercial for those of you who've been following this. And I'm hoping, and I think this video is going to get a lot of views and the people are going to stay on it. David is an incredible scientist, as you can hear today, an expert in gematria, numbers, divinely guided. I'm going to call him a prophet, so to speak. I don't want to, blow things up too much, but I really think that you are a tremendous gift to humanity. So thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your kind words. And we'll just have to do a follow-up. I love Mount Shasta. I wish I could be there. There's an incredible energy there.
One of these days.
When my 8-year-old gets to the point that, I can leave her with her grandma or something like that, then I might do it. Or bring her with me, when I'm at that level. But my 13-year-old is very independent and my children are everything to me. Absolutely everything.
So, as it should be.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Now, it never made sense to me. How could the speed of light be exactly 186,282 miles per second? Instead of point something miles, it ends at the 2. Right. 186,282 instead of 182 point something.
So, Crystal, how did you know that?
I just knew instinctually, when you work from your center a lot, you just have feelings about or knowings, not even feelings. Yeah. It was just a knowing that it was off and it wasn't precise enough. And sure enough, when he decodes things. He gets down to
Well,
the exact decimal of everything.
I looked into the early Michelson-Morley experiments, which were done in Irvine, California, in this tunnel,
Right.
when they were trying to define the speed of light as an absolute measurement.